everyone, and thank you for once again joining me on my LinkedIn Live and other networks video stream. Today, we are going to do a content UX audit. Just a reminder that I am going to be doing these live streams every 2 weeks, and then occasionally I'll throw in an extra one just based on different topics that come up that I want to add to the mix. I'm just going to take a moment here to make sure the stream is working. We are streaming to LinkedIn, to Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook, so wherever you most prefer to consume your content. And it does look like it's working, so we can go ahead and get started. So one of the first things that I wanted to mention or remind you of is the ability to submit your content for a future audit similar to the one that I'll be doing today. So you can use this URL that you see on the bottom of the screen. It's blogsmith minus the vowels .tips/content UX. It will lead you to a form that asks a couple quick questions, not all required, but essentially to submit a URL that represents a live piece of content. So not necessarily like a PDF, but something that's on a website so that we can adequately weigh in on different measures of the content experience. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to get a little bit meta with this one since it's the first content UX audit that I'll be doing in a while. And just as a reminder, flashback of why I'm doing this, I used to do a version of this live streaming series where I would audit friends, colleagues, people in my networks websites. So it wasn't totally focused on content, but content was a part of it. This was back when I still offered web design services, and now I'm more fully focused on content. My agency is built around creating content, and so we're kind of narrowing the scope here, but also acknowledging that design plays a factor into the content experience and kind of marrying these two worlds of where I started as a website designer and what I know about good design and what I now know as like a writer, a content creator, and all those things coming full circle. So today we're going to talk about my own content. Again, I'll invite you to submit yours for the future. And then at the end, I'll talk a little bit about our next live stream, what the topic will be for that. It won't be a content audit. We're kind of switching off between topics of interest that we've covered, for example, on the Blogsmith blog or for other purposes. There's a couple topics that are coming to mind for future live streams based on a presentation I did last week for Solid WP. We talked a little bit about AI and content UX and things like that. So those might get sprinkled in. But anyway, let's go ahead and start with the topic today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and share, like, this is kind of what a client would receive. And so the Blogsmith, we treat ourselves as a client. And the document you see, again, is kind of along the same lines of what a client would receive from us. So in terms of like content audits moving forward, again, it's better for me to be able to judge the full experience with something that's live on the website. But for today, again, I wanted to get a little bit meta to show you how we work behind the scenes and some of the back and forth that occurs between the members of my team and specifically with this topic today for the Blogsmith blog. So let's start by just talking about what this document includes. When we're sending a piece of content to a client, what are some of the different things that they see that they have a chance to review or interact with? So the first thing we do is we include a link to the ClearScope report. And anytime we're creating content that has an SEO purpose, we are including a ClearScope report and a link so that the client can see where we're getting our information from. And for those of you who don't know, ClearScope is a content optimization tool. It works by analyzing the top search results for a given keyword. And so ClearScope is a tool that you would want to use after deciding on a primary keyword. It's not the tool that you necessarily would use to make the decision as to what that keyword is. It's just once you've decided that that's what you want to optimize for, then it generates a report to help you to really thoroughly address that topic in a way that will help you to rank in relevant search. And so talking about how exactly that works is a little bit outside the scope of what we're going to talk about today, but just to give you a little bit of context as to why we include that, and just sharing with clients the direction that we're taking and why. ClearScope also does things like it suggests semantic terms, related keywords, secondary keywords, and it also suggests an ideal word count length, again, based on the currently top ranking articles. So that's why it's relevant to our clients. So then we get into like just restating the topic, the client's name, and then here's kind of the meat and potatoes. So what we like to do is make sure that we share a list of all links, both referenced, so that's this first one, sources referenced but not linked to, as well as any external links that we've included, things that help back up any facts that we state, help to back up any claims made in general, primary sources for facts, that's what I meant to say, and information that might be related to the topic but outside of the scope of the article. So if people want to dig in deeper, including an authoritative source that they can do that with. And then we also like to proactively share whatever internal links we've included. A lot of clients are wanting to understand the SEO process that goes behind creating content, and they may or may not reference any or all of these details, but we want to show them like our thought process and give them the chance to also see like if there was a particular link that they wanted included, from an internal linking standpoint, for example, to be able to see at a glance if it was included and if that's something that we need to weave in. Okay, so then the next part of this particular document and what we share with clients are any keywords that we've included. It's traditionally been Ahrefs for our keyword research. We also use SEMrush now, so it kind of depends on the SEO who was doing the research for the project. In the past, I've given these links. So this is, again, kind of like from the client point of view. So these are little videos that I've filmed to help them understand like the numbers and like, why did we choose the keyword based on the difficulty and the search volume and, other details like that. There's also one for ClearScope. It probably wasn't included on this one because this is for me and I'm the one who made the video. So, but we like to include some like helpful things, especially really for either new clients or clients who are maybe not as well versed in content and SEO, so that they not only are getting this data, but they're getting useful details for understanding the data. So we'll include screenshots for like the primary keywords, sometimes the secondary keywords. We'll also include any secondary or semantic keywords that were suggested from other tools. You'll see some data here. This is, more like back end between us at the Blogsmith versus like what we'd put into the document for a client. Process Street is the tool we use, and that's part of our keyword research process, is that they create a very detailed brief that is then condensed in terms of what you see in front of you here. It's not all the details that the SEOs give the writers, but sort of like the most important details that a client would want to see in terms of like keywords that we're targeting, kind of breaking them down in terms of how important it is to include them. So we don't treat every keyword as like having to go in this document, but it's more like here are some things to think about and to help structure the content itself, to help put together the approach to the content, including things like the SERP features, like people also ask questions that relate to the primary keyword, related searches, and Google autocomplete are all things that also are considered by the writer when they put this together. For, I would say, the majority of articles we create, we're looking for at least one featured snippet opportunity or the ability to rank in position 0 above the rest of organic search results. So here's the example of the one we picked for this topic. And this topic, by the way, is not live yet. It's in its final edits. And so this is like a step right before the final edit is what I'm showing you today, just to kind of show you that back and forth. So to summarize with the keywords, we're looking for multiple different ways that clients can rank in relevant search. We're also using the keywords to really define the topic and how in depth we need to go. what different points need to be hit on. So then we get to the meta information. And for some clients, we are uploading this content to their content management system, to their website for them. But some of them have their own process for that. They want to do it themselves. And so making sure that this information is easy to just copy and paste and throw into their tool of choice, their CMS, is really important for us. The whole point of this document is so that somebody can take it and upload it and capitalize off of any SEO strategies that have been baked into how we're approaching this content. We also include a folder with all the image assets. One thing that you may or may not be aware of, depending on how often you work in Google Docs, how much content work you do, is that you can actually go to File and then Download. And then if you save as a web page, the HTML zipped file, it will also give you all of the image files in this document, including like kind of unintentional things like the keyword screenshots, but certainly like all the other images that are in here as well. But sometimes it's nice to have the images ready to go, to have them named properly. So we do that just as a standard. It used to be that clients would request it, but it gets requested enough that they're in this separate document that we just go ahead and proactively do that. Okay, so let's get into the article itself. And again, this isn't going to be like kind of a full audit of the content experience because, again, this is within Google Docs, so it's not on the live site. That being said, I think there is a benefit to showing how we approach edits in terms of how that benefits the content experience, and also, I guess, generally speaking, the experience of how clients get their first draft from us. So this topic is why topic clusters are important for your SEO strategy. It's something that we wanted to cover because it's a question that comes up from clients. It's something that we want to show them how we approach it and how to use it for kind of like planning out an approach to content for their own brands. So every image you'll notice has an alt tag. Alt tags are really important from the content experience perspective because not only do they help search engines understand the context of the image, but they also help people who are using assistive technology like screen readers. So people who may be blind, for example, and who can't visually see the image, they need some additional context to understand what it is and how it relates to that article. So we always include alt tags by default. So as you can see, we're starting to get into the article. And Amanda is our managing director. So she's kind of representing the client here, the Blogsmith. I used to be one of the point people for going through these drafts just because I'm very particular. Not all clients are going to have, that same level of getting involved in the details. But in terms of how the Blogsmith talks about SEO, it's a very nuanced take. And so again, Amanda's kind of representing me, representing us as the Blogsmith in this situation. And then Amber is the editor on this draft. And so in general, whenever we do a topic, it's the same writer all the way through. It's the same editor. So the editor is interacting with it from the outline stage to the draft stage and, through any edits, whether they are internal or involving the client. So, the benefit of that is that Amber, for example, with this topic has a lot of context based on the different phases that it's gone through. So, you'll start to see some just like basic suggestions in terms of like formatting and flow, different ways that we could go about saying things. We try to keep the intros, I would say, fairly short and sweet, enough to entice the reader to want to click through, or not click through, but scroll through, keep reading. And then something that we do as a standard is we always include a table of contents. And we do this for probably all of our clients. I don't think there's an exception to that. Even if it doesn't end up becoming a clickable table of contents on their website, we do like to have that list there so that people can understand. It's sort of setting expectations for where that article is going. And one pro tip, again, I'll give you from Google Docs, since that's what we're dealing with right now, is to never directly copy this table of contents into your CMS, because what ends up happening is these links here are linked back to the Google Doc. And so yeah, that was a lesson learned from a client doing their own CMS upload and finding that error for them and fixing it. But hopefully it saves you some grief in the future. You'll notice too, I forgot to mention this, how certain words are highlighted or have a different color than the standard text. So we do kind of explain it up here, and I just forgot to mention it. So let me just scroll up really quick to show you. Um, so anything that's like a keyword, um, I think it's from more than just Ahrefs or from SEMrush, but if it's a keyword, we either highlight it or use purple text. And for some reason right now, I'm forgetting what the distinction is. But in either case, you can imagine it being a specific keyword that should be implemented. And the reason why we either highlight or have a different color for them here is so that clients, when they're going through and doing their own series of edits, they know why we've used those particular words. And if they make edits, it's to try to maintain the keywords that we've already used, basically. And so I mentioned ClearScope as one of the tools we use for keywords. I've mentioned Ahrefs and SEMrush. We use some other tools. We use Phrase. It's kind of more of a content briefing tool. It's also known as a content optimization tool, but we use it on the front end of our research. We use ClearScope more on the back end. And then we also use a tool called Market Views to come up with semantic keyword ideas. So these keywords are coming from a multitude of different places. Okay. So, yeah, I think another thing that's really important is to not only say like when you want to change things or like doing edits that are like critical of the writer. You want to be critical. You want to do it in a kind way, and I hope that's what you see. Like as we go through here, like we're all collaborators on this. Like no one person is right or wrong. There are different approaches, and we're all adding our own perspective and expertise. But again, I think it is really important to also call out things that go really well. And I was looking at a draft today for another one of our topics that our SEO had weighed in on. And you're not going to see her comments on this piece because I think that that's either the previous step or the next step based on where this piece is from what I'm talking about today. But she had mentioned like, oh, this passage would be a really great pull quote opportunity, like a block quote that we could add emphasis to or make an image for or things like that. And so, we all give a different perspective. Our SEO is going to have a different perspective than our editor, than Amanda as our managing director / the client in this case. But, we can all recognize good work and we can all do that, I guess, from our unique perspective. So let's keep moving here. And, I think you'll notice too, or I guess I'll point it out, that we aim for like really short sentences and paragraphs. We like to have a lot of white space. We want people to not feel overwhelmed when they're reading our content, even though you can see that this document is 21 pages long. A lot of that has to do with the stuff that you saw at the top here that's like setting the scene, like the research, and also the images. There are a lot of images in this document. And we're not trying to make them small for the sake of having less pages, since, it's once we upload them to the website that it matters like exactly how they look. Okay, so, it's also using things like bullet points, certain formatting, like using bold text. So all this we talk about in our style guide, our specific approach to that, but just thought it's worth mentioning. So you'll see Amanda just like trying to kind of poke holes again in a respectful way, in a way that adds value, but like looking at this from the perspective of not only the client, us, the Blogsmith, but also the person who's going to read this page. Like, is there anything left unsaid? I guess that's probably the best way to describe it. And so a lot of Amanda's comments kind of go towards that. Or it's things like, could we add more color to this? Are there things that we could expand on that would help whoever is reading this to like really get and understand this topic? Like here we have this cool sort of like mini infographic that talks about or that shares an example of a topic cluster. But Amanda is saying here, like, what would like this end page look like? Like a pillar page that represents linking to all these subtopics within the cluster, for example. and explaining her reasoning why. So not just like asking for something, but trying to help the writer understand why we would do that. And it's also, I guess, for the editor's benefit as well to know what purpose that serves, so that when the writer makes that change, they understand if it's been done to the extent that we want it made. Okay, so continuing to go here, just making suggestions for where to link certain articles that give context. Again, when it comes to SEO, we always want to be thinking about like what are the most relevant links to include, both in terms of the external links, but also our internal links. Continuing down here, again, representing the client, like maybe there's more to this image that should be included. Are we making sure that it's on brand with the other images on this page? Okay. And then, pulling also in like our SEO knowledge here. So Amanda is like defending our stance on SEO, making sure that the writer is representing it correctly, and also in this case, also pulling in our SEO to weigh in. So that's the team approach in action. When we are linking to things that aren't a website, like for like a PDF, for example, we always include that reference, but we typically link to a landing page. If we have access to that PDF, but we had to give our email to get it, if it's gated content, we want to respect the organization that gated it for their specific purposes. And if somebody wants to download that themselves and share their email, then that's certainly something that they could do, but we're not going to link to the direct PDF if that wasn't the intention of the original publisher of that content. But we like to, again, from like an editing perspective, include it so that we can double check that stat and make sure it's correct, make sure it's being represented correctly. Okay, so some more graphics. Our graphic designers are awesome. This is just an example of how they approach Blogsmith content. You've seen a couple different examples of graphics they've created, whether that's a featured image or an infographic, or stuff like this that shows kind of like different stages, almost like a chart in a way. But we work with a lot of different brands, a lot of enterprise brands that have very strict standards for their graphics. And so what's great is like they can do this stuff, but they can also do things that, represent a wide range of styles and also different types of graphics. And we've done some interesting stuff for clients in terms of even like animation explainer videos, longer infographics, custom illustrations. So this is just, one take on what they're capable of. But we include on-brand graphics in every piece of content that we create, unless the client, has reason not to. Maybe they have their own graphic designers they want to use, or maybe they have a specific visual style using, maybe more like stock imagery. But the majority of clients take us up on this part of our offering. Okay, yeah, here's another cool example of a graphic. And I think, the point of even bringing it up is that visuals really add a lot of usefulness to written content. I think that written content is really only a piece of the picture. I like to read. I'm a reader. I don't necessarily need the visuals to get into like a story, for example, like a fiction book. I can kind of figure out, or I can put a picture together in my head, I guess is what I'm saying. But I think when it comes to B2B content, it is really important for those visuals to be present, just because it helps to move people along. And I think that people learn in a lot of different ways. And so that's why we have different visuals. Sometimes we're embedding, relevant videos. Sometimes it is like GIFs, showing, for example, like how to use a SaaS product, like a certain feature. So all those things are really important. This particular article is, I would say, pretty infographic heavy, just because that's the nature of the topic. But that's not to say that it wouldn't benefit from, some of these other types of visuals. So here's Amanda again, kind of like poking holes. Like some of these are feeling kind of similar. We either want to like get rid of something or maybe combine it or flesh it out. So we're not necessarily trying to like fully solve the problem for the writer. We're just trying to steer them in the right direction. And then another comment on, the information's good, but can we make the flow better? Again, poking some holes. Another good example of a graphic. Amanda, again, kind of defending like our stance on, I guess, like digital marketing and SEO in general. How can we flesh this out to make it more useful to that end reader? Another cool graphic. Here we've also tagged our SEO, asking for her input specifically on this related SEO subject. So because we're writing a lot of content about SEO for clients of ours, one part of our process in general is not only tagging the SEOs on our team when we have a question about that when it's relevant to the topic, but they also serve as fact checkers because they're the ones who are doing that initial topic research, and they are researchers kind of by trade. So they assist the editors, especially when it comes to validating specific facts. And if we're doing, say, for example, like a listicle where we're talking about different tools and pricing plans and offerings and things like that, the SEOs will go through and verify that the writer has accurately reviewed those things and included them in the piece of content to help the editors focus on what they do best, which is, the structure and the grammar and the spelling and agreement and things like that. Whereas the SEOs are really great researchers. So that's the role that they play kind of at the end. Oh, I guess it was this article. I love this, and it might be a good pull quote opportunity too. So again, like calling out the good, but also adding all of our own unique perspectives. Like, Amanda hadn't mentioned it, Amber hadn't mentioned it, but to Rochelle, like, who's an expert on SEO, that really resonated with her. So it's a good perspective to have. Okay, I know this is a very long document, so I'm just trying to see if there's anything else worth mentioning here. Just some more ideas and back and forth between Amanda and Amber. Some more cool graphics. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. And then again, sort of like defending us as the client, like, how does this relate back to the Blogsmith? We have interspersed ourselves throughout in terms of like those internal links that I've mentioned, but how do we kind of like wrap it up at the end in a way that makes sense for like why we're even covering this topic, like what it has to do with us as a brand. So, yeah, I hope that this was interesting and useful in terms of like what our process is. I'm just gonna go back to the camera here and stop sharing my screen. But yeah, this is kind of like, the standard article that we write at the Blogsmith. We do short form content too. They're not all, 21 pages long or whatever, but it really depends on the nature of the topic, the brand who's commissioning it, and the specific take that we want to share. So for this one, it made sense to go, pretty in depth, and cover it from a lot of different angles. And whether it's for us or for clients, we always want to create something that's, really useful for the end reader, because I think at the end of the day, if there's already so much content that's already been created and published on the internet. We don't want to just spit out something that is a take on that, a slight difference, a reworked version of that. We want to add something that's unique. We want to make it easier for a person to consume it however we can, whether that's with language or with visuals and things like that. So I think that's all I have to say for today. I kind of went longer than I intended to. I really want to keep these to like 15 to 20 minutes in general. But of course, since this is about our process and like the back end way that we work, there's a lot of the things that I have to say. So once again, I will invite you to use this link at the bottom of the screen here, to submit your own content for an audit. And again, the idea is that it's something that's live on a website already so that I can give you some feedback about how design relates to the reader experience. Next time, once again, 2 weeks from now, same time, I will have another one of these live streams. It won't be a content audit this time. It will be basically an in-depth look at something that we've dived into like on our blog. In this case, it's going to be about low search volume keywords and why it's our recommendation that you should use them. Yeah, until then, if you have any questions, please let me know. And I would love to audit your website and content in the future. Thanks for joining me. Bye.